State of the Industry podcast. And here we go. This episode is brought to you by KP Movement Education, your source for health and movement education and coaching. Whether you are a health or fitness professional, a fitness consumer, or perhaps a passive bystander, KP believes that everyone deserves the right to pain-free movement. That's why their memberships and services are designed to educate, empower, and inspire you to create a culture of movement for yourself and those around you. With 2 membership options, you'll find education surrounding developing at-home training programs for yourself or for others, mental health and exercise, lifestyle medicine, and much, much more. Check it out at kineticperformance.ca/memberships. That's kineticperformance.ca/memberships. Hey, Fit Fam, welcome back to the State of the Industry podcast. I am your host, Jenn Jongsma. In this week's episode, I continue my conversation with Jenn Jongsma about outdoor exploration and risky play for child development. In part 2, Jenn focuses on the role of the parents, teachers, and trainers in modeling healthy behaviors for children and provides practical tips to optimize our environment and change our language. Without further ado, let's dive right in. Welcome back to part 2 here with Jenn, and we are talking all about risky play, inquiry-based learning, and in this part 2, we're going to really discuss some things that parents and teachers and educators can do in order to improve not only the movement of our children, but also the development of our children as well. Continuing on with our conversation that we had in part 1, can you just discuss a little bit about the role that the parent plays in fostering a healthy, active lifestyle in their children?
Parents have a big role in fostering that for their children. The most important role falls to the parents, and educators and school staff kind of can support that happening at home. But parents have a big job in that they are the ones that their children are looking to for modeling behavior, modeling priorities. And so if parents are prioritizing and modeling movement, modeling different types of movement and different activities, then more likely their children will be doing those types of things as well. And I know that, if parents are taking their kids out for bike rides and for walks in the park and are going out and doing different types of things, then those are activities that the kids will value themselves. And if they see their parents, working out or going to the gym, when gyms were open, but going to a gym, working out, then the research shows that, those kids are more likely to be more active. And so, parents have this opportunity to instill movement and the joy of movement in their children. And, it's something that parents shouldn't take lightly. And, they have the opportunity to set their kids up for success in life. And it's as simple as going for a walk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's important that, parents and caregivers realize that, their kids are looking to them, and that, something as simple as just going for a daily walk with your kids can have just this long lasting impact on them.
Yeah. I think, we talk about healthy, active lifestyle primarily with regards to movement, but I think within the home with parents, it also stems to the nutrition side of things as well, to screen time to, when they get to the point, but reading and demonstrating those types of things, right? Because like, if you think about parents, like, they're the biggest role model in a child's life, right? Like, they have the biggest impact. Educators are up there as well, because you're with them specifically from basically kindergarten all the way up until grade 12, but you're with them all the time, and then friends start to take over in that, right? So you see that there's different pockets of people who all play into the development of a child and a young person. And yeah, I think that the parents can definitely assist in fostering that environment for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is there an environment for change? Is there an environment for learning? Is there an environment for moving? And most people just see the home as being somewhere to live, but that's your classroom. Like, that is a parent's classroom, is the house.
Yeah, and we always talk in education about, you know, our classrooms, but you could say in this context as the house being a third teacher. So in our classroom, you know, the kids are teachers, we're teachers, but then our classroom also teaches. And so if you're looking at your house kind of in that same mentality, right? Like, what is our house? What is our classroom teaching our kids? Where are there opportunities for them to learn more in this space specifically?
Mm-hmm. And so, how might someone, if we're thinking about the home now, and for a parent, how might a parent turn the home into an environment where it is now a third teacher, and it's teaching the right things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that you can do, but there's also, it doesn't need to be a ton of money like thrown into a fancy playroom or things like that. But I think most important would be to have open-ended materials. So those could be just something as simple as milk crates and tubes from toilet paper, or get larger ones that they're going to throw out at a tool, like a hardware store, you know, the interior from
Or wrapping
carpets.
paper, or
Yeah,
something
something like that. Like those hard tubes are wonderful, and they throw them out. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you can get those and get them to chop them up. I've been in a few Home Depots and Canadian Tires asking them to chop up tubes for me. So just having open-ended materials inside your house, but also available for outdoor play as well, are really great opportunities. I think there's a lot of value in rotating toys, especially for younger children. So if you're, you know, keep their staples that they love, but rotate other ones in and out, because that again encourages creativity, encourages open-mindedness and imagination. So rotating toys out so that they're not getting bored and falling into that trap of doing the same thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So rotating toys, bringing out new open-ended materials, just really thinking about, is this toy or this material constraining the play? And there's definitely a place for that. Like, you know, they have things like kitchens as toys and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. But the nice thing about a kitchen is it's not just, yes, it's a kitchen, but it is a little bit more open-ended in that kids are reenacting things that are familiar to them. So there is value in toys that promote play for them that are familiar, because then that's when you're going to build on the language skills and the language development that you want in especially younger children.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just thinking about how the materials that you're giving or providing for your children, what are they promoting? What are they teaching? Is there opportunity for it to be used in multiple ways? I think that's a good question to kind of ask. We also talk a lot about, you know, why this for this kid at this time. So just kind of thinking through, like, why do I want my kid to have this toy? What value is this toy going to bring to their play, to their life? So just really being kind of critical of what you're putting in front of your kid, so that you're really just thinking about their development. Is this going to promote language skills? Is this going to promote fine motor skills? Is this going to promote, gross motor? Whatever skill you're specifically looking for. It's important to be kind of thinking with that mindset when you're setting up a playroom, or you're setting up, you know, a kid's hangout room if you have
Mm-hmm.
older kids. And then the same goes for the yard, and if you have one. Just providing things that they can build with, that they can create with, creating a space that promotes imagination and wonder and awe. Nature's so cool because it does do that. So, you know, having books that are connected to things they might find outside in their backyard that can allow them to then ask questions and then find answers. would promote that inquiry approach. And then, the loose parts and things, if you have bigger ones when they're outside, you're building that movement. So if they're lifting heavy rocks or logs and moving them around the yard, that they're, building that and helping, that helps with the sensory. The heavy lifting is a really great input for kids who have sensory difficulties or challenges. So allowing kids to be moving logs around and to be moving rocks around when they're outside is a really cool, dual purpose, right? Helping with sensory, but also allowing them to create and feel independent and strong and powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you showed me, because you just talked about the play kitchen, but I remember you showed me a video of a child who's basically making meals in the kitchen, and so the parent is taking the time, is slowing down, and is providing the child with the opportunity to assist them in cooking. And I know
in a real kitchen,
in a real kitchen,
yeah.
And so not getting them something that's fake, because you mentioned, we talked about the tyke tool set, and it's not a real hammer, and so all they can use it for is being a hammer. But if you have a stick, then it's a little bit different. But if they have a real hammer outside, then they can start to use that to learn a skill such as hammering nails into wood, maybe building things as they get older. But same thing in the kitchen as well. If you get them a play kitchen, it's limited to a kitchen. Yes, you can act out scenarios that are familiar to you, but if you bring them into the real kitchen, you can actually have them building things like under supervision, but building things of their own, cooking things and contributing in that sense, and maybe even sparking an interest and a joy. Like there's, I'm teach at a college here in Toronto, and so many of the students have, like, they just say, I have no idea how to cook. That's why I don't cook. So I eat out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, whose fault is that? Like, that's the parents, right? Like that, to me, that's the parents' fault for not teaching, not allowing that student the ability, the opportunity to learn how to cook. Right now, maybe the parent didn't know how to cook themselves, and so then that's passed down generations, and then we can play the blame game all you want, right? But cooking isn't something you're born with. It's a skill that you learn, right? It's a passion that you end up having, and it comes from somewhere. And so I think that's as well something that a parent can foster as well, outside of just movement, is being involved in different things in the home, and teaching them kind of responsibility, but also some life skills with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know in the first part we talked all about risky play and outdoor play, and so what is a parent's role now in letting go, right, of enabling themselves to, because oftentimes they're led by fear and anxiety in not wanting their child to get hurt, but how can they take a step back in those situations where their child may be encountering risk, in order to allow them to develop a little bit better?
Yeah, so I think parents have a hard role, right, in, especially if you're someone who is a little bit more anxious or nervous about your child getting hurt. It's a little more difficult to kind of take a step back, like you say. I think something that's so important is making sure that your anxieties and your nervousness as an adult doesn't rub off on your child. I mean, we see so many children with anxiety in younger grades, and I feel like it's starting earlier and earlier that kids are feeling anxiety. And I mean, I'm not a researcher, so I don't know for sure where that's coming from, but I believe that a lot of it is learned. And, if I see that my mom or my dad or my grandma or my aunt or whoever is anxious and nervous about me climbing, about me going to school, about me walking on the street, then that's something that I also need to be nervous and anxious about. So I feel like a lot of that nervousness, that anxiety that we're seeing in young kids is learned. And so as a parent, it's so difficult to try and swallow some of that anxiety and try and hide it from your kids. So, in some of the research around this, if you're kind of looking at some of the experts, so to speak, in play and risk injury and injury prevention, here in Canada, they have talked a lot about this idea of, the 17 seconds or 20 seconds. So, you see your kid starting to climb a tree and your instant reaction is going to be stop. Don't do that. That's too high. Be careful. So instead of saying that, just bite your tongue for like 17 seconds and just watch what your kid does. And they'll probably surprise you. I think we have these expectations that kids can't figure situations out, that kids aren't able to navigate these situations, and they need us to be doing it for them. But I think if you take, the 17 seconds to stop and to watch them do it, you'll see that they actually have more skills than you really kind of imagined. I remember we were outside with, it was about 3 years old, the little one. And, there's this big rock kind of drop. And we were watching him as he kind of was excited about potentially climbing up that rock. And without any adult, like there's an adult nearby to kind of help if he needed, but he slowly, step by step, used hands and feet and like managed to climb his way to the top. And, he got to the top and he was so happy. But you could also just see, like, I was sitting beside his mom and I could just kind of feel her nervousness, but she didn't say anything. And so then the joy that came out of him being at that top of that, rock wall. And then what did he do? He climbed back down and went up again, right? And just continued to learn those skills. And he's building so many motor skills, and he knew he could do it and do it safely. If he hadn't made it up and he got stuck halfway and kind of panicked and they helped him down, he probably would not have done it again until he had gained more confidence in his motor skills. So I think giving your child the space, or as an educator, giving your student the space to try things and to maybe fail at things, is a better learning opportunity than you jumping in and telling them what to do or what not to do. Mm-hmm. So I think kind of taking that step back, those 17 seconds, if you need to count it, then count it, but take that time, that step back to just allow your child and let you see what they're capable of. Another thing that parents can do to help with that, to build kind of risk management skills in their children, is to use language in a way that's not building anxiety. So, if your kid, we have an area in our yard at our school that has wood on the ground. It's like a bridge. So it can get very, very slippery when it rains. So, I always would catch myself being like, be careful, be careful, be careful. But those words are actually meaningless to a child, because I'm not telling them what they need to be careful of. I'm not telling them why they need to be careful, other than I just am instilling fear. So it's something that I've been working on, that I know parents can work on too, is just changing your language around that. So instead of saying be careful, I could say, I noticed that the wood is wet, and sometimes it gets slippery when it's wet. So giving them the information, I think I said this in the last part, but giving them information to then navigate that risk or that, hurdle on their own. And so if they step on it and they slip, they're like, oh yeah, it rained, it's wet, I slipped just like she said. So now next time I need to be a little bit more cautious. Maybe I don't run full tilt across the slippery, wet bridge, but I might slow down, or I might go around if I want to keep running at this speed. So using your language to kind of talk through. A friend of mine, her son loved jumping off of the stairs. And so, he was young enough that he didn't really know how high was really great for him. So they worked through that with him and found a spot. They started slower, and he would jump off of 1 or 2 stairs. And she kind of just talked through the, like, when you jump, you need to be ready. So you need to have your, 2 feet you're going to land, and kind of just talked through what jumping would look like at a certain height versus another height, and kind of talked it through with him. And, the one time he tries to jump with all the things in his arms, well, when you jump before with your out, you use your hands to help you land. And so if you're holding all these things, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for you to land. And so over time, if you're using that language, eventually your kids will start to use that language as well. And so she had said he, one time was walking down the stairs. He was like, I'm going to jump. And then I was like, oh no, I have lots of things in my hands. I won't be able to land. And so eventually your kids will learn that language if you're modeling it for them. So I think it's important to, if you're going to say be careful, it's fine, but maybe follow that up with why they need to be careful, so that then they can internalize that, so that then it applies to them in other situations. So, the slippery wood, if I'm at a friend's place and they have a dock, and I'm maybe thinking back to that experience that I had when I slipped on the wet dock, or the wet wood at my classroom. Oh, and maybe in this situation, that's probably the same. So kids are able to then, internalize that, assimilate it to their knowledge and their schema, and then apply it into new situations. So parents have the opportunity to model positive language, model non-fear based language, and just provide the opportunity, that step back, to say, if I wait these 17 seconds, I'm actually providing my child with a much richer learning opportunity than me just jumping in and kind of saving them, so to speak, from a situation, from risk. So those are kind of some things that the easiest and kind of most tangible things that parents can do to try and help manage risk for their children and for themselves, because a lot of it is managing what risk you're okay with and figuring out, what as a parent you feel safe allowing your child to explore.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll get you to speak to this in a second, but I think with, if you see a child in kindergarten who has a whole lot of now anxiety over in different situations or something like that, it's more difficult to get that child now to explore their own capabilities than it would be if they had developed that process through as a younger child, right? So this is primarily for those before they even get to school, because if I'm thinking about this correctly, when you have a child, you basically demonstrate the hierarchy a little bit. I guess that is maybe not quite the right word, but you're demonstrating anxiety in different situations by saying certain things. And so then when they go to school, they don't have the parent anymore, but they have the teacher. But they may actually revert back to thinking, well, no, my parent said I can't do that, so I won't do that. And so no matter what the teacher says, the student won't do it unless the parent actually allows that. And so for those who maybe have, who are listening, who maybe have children or have nieces, nephews, something like that, going to be grandkids, really working on the language that you are speaking to your child in, because it's never too late to get them to start exploring their own possibilities and start to be able to problem solve on their own, right?
And I think also, just to add on to that, using that positive language to start a situation, to say, watch, I noticed that it's slippery, when it's wet, but then also kind of following up whenever you see them really kind of process risk and then work to avoid it and make a choice to avoid it, is to name that behavior. Like, oh, I noticed that you didn't, climb up all the way to the top of the tree, even though, your friend Adam did. I noticed that you didn't. And so can you maybe ask why they didn't do that? Maybe talk about it. Or say, I like that you didn't do that because I knew that you weren't feeling very confident in your abilities to climb all the way to the top. So I think the importance to name that. And then for those kids that have difficulties assessing risk, because there are children that have difficulty and 100% need a parent or a guardian alongside them navigating those situations, they're conversations to have. So I've had many a conversation with kids who, climb up a tree and get stuck. And then I have to bring them down. And then we kind of talk about, what happened, why we think it happened, and then what should we do next time. And so it allows, those conversations, or for the kid that runs and slips and falls on the slippery wet wood, what's the conversation that you're having after, right? Is it, oh, why do you think you fell? And let them kind of think through some of that, because then that's also then allowing them to continue to process that risk out of the risky situation, but then also to kind of think through that there are consequences, and the consequences can be fabulous and consequences could be potentially harmful. But recognizing that, every action has a consequence, whether it's positive or not. They slowed down, they didn't fall. That was the consequence. That they stayed up and they kept on going. Or they didn't slow down and they fell. That was also a consequence. So giving the kids, just as the adult, commenting on those. I really liked how you you didn't jump from four steps up, but you stepped down two more so that you felt safe, and then you jumped and you landed successfully. So just pointing that learning out to them, because then that continues to build up their motivation for making safer choices and for doing things within their realm of what's available in their risk.
Yeah. So when we're slowly coming, well, at least appears that we're slowly coming out of this current pandemic that we are finding ourselves in. And I think it's really amplified a lot of the fears that a lot of parents have. And I know you've told me a few stories about what parents are allowing their children to do in these scenarios. And how has this pandemic kind of amplified or increased the importance of movement at home, in the yard, outside, or maybe even with their family?
It's so important. I mean, all of us, if you've been anywhere in the world and you've been in lockdown, it's been hard sometimes to find that motivation to move. And I know that I haven't been living with children throughout this entire pandemic, and so I don't know what that looks like in an everyday situation at home. But a lot of the families that I've worked with have said that they found that the only way to kind of start the day was to go for a walk and to take all the kids, and the whole family went for a morning walk every day, and that helped them set the stage for a successful day. And so the families that I know are doing well are all families that I know have included outdoor active play in their days. And all of them have spoken to the value that movement has had, especially as a family unit, all doing it together. So one of the families that I know, they are out mountain biking and out biking. I'd say like half my class learned how to ride two wheels during this, this pandemic. It allows kids to be moving unfortunately, the way that school is during this pandemic, it's been a lot of screen time. It's been a lot of sitting. And I know that a lot of us as teachers have been trying to integrate, little movement breaks into what we're assigning for them. But it's different than having a recess and having, those structured outdoor learning times. So I think parents and families need to kind of pick that up. That's been missing that they normally get during the day. The recommendation for children is vigorous activity for at least an hour every single day. And so that helps with their mental clarity, that helps with their physical development, that helps with their heart health. So I think it's so important to still, be integrating that into a family routine every day. And, every family looks different depending on what time parents are going to work, if parents are going to work, if they have access to outdoor space, if they feel comfortable going out into the outdoor space. I think that every family looks different, but finding some type of active, vigorous movement that works in your family every day, I think is important. So whether that's, you don't feel safe or comfortable going out into public, that you're in your house creating obstacle courses, and, you're climbing up on top of the couch, and you're jumping off the couch, and you're doing different types of movement inside your house, if that's where you feel safe. If you're feeling a little bit more, adventurous, you go for a walk in a forest and you're not walking on the trail, you're walking through the brush, and you're climbing on the downed trees, and you're walking, avoiding branches, that kind of thing. But finding the time for movement is probably more important than them finishing their homework.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they're not moving, then their brains actually can't learn. So movement is what kind of solidifies understanding, solidifies knowledge. That in sleep. So I think that, it's as hard as it is to kind of schedule that time in. I think it's so important for families to be making that a priority, especially during, this crazy pandemic time.
Yeah. And I know even us walking around a little bit down through the trails by our house, you've made this comment a few times where we see families who you probably wouldn't have seen together outside walking. And this isn't with young kids. This is with even teenagers, right, who at that point are probably trying to pull away, find out who they are by themselves without their parents. They're out walking with their parents because they're the only people they're allowed to hang out with at that time. Now's a little different where
Yeah.
you see groups of teenagers now out all over the
Playing
place.
basketball and stuff. Yeah.
But this is more near the beginning where it was very interesting to see full families from, maybe a child who's 7, 8, 9 years old. And then you've got another one who's 13, 14. Then you've got one who's 17, 18, right? And they're all walking together, which typically wouldn't happen because some would be in school, they'd have homework, they'd have maybe be at university or something like that. So I think that was really nice to see as well, is that there were a lot of families using the opportunity to be more active. But I feel as though in that situation, there's either people who are doing nothing or there's people who are doing a lot.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
It's rarely we're doing a little bit of it. It's one or the other. They're doing a lot of it, which is really good, or they're not doing any of it. Yeah. So the last thing that I want to chat about is now bringing this all back to schools and classrooms a little bit, because I know we've done some research on this, and you guys at your school where you are, you have like an outdoor natural play area. So can you just talk about kind of how you've seen this importance of risky play and movement specifically in children with regards to their development, reflected in how classrooms are now starting to be laid out, and how the outdoor play spaces have started to be put together?
Yeah. So schools are starting to kind of see the value in this active outdoor type of play. It's definitely still a battle between, the health and safety lens for people who aren't in the children development area and the teachers who are living it every day. So there is still definitely some tension between those two camps. But I know that a lot of the schools are starting to build yards specifically for the kindergartens, because the kindergarten yards in Ontario are fenced in pavement areas. There's very little to no grass or mulch or dirt or trees or anything. It's just pavement and fence. So I know that a lot of schools have been starting to, realize that, especially in those early years, the ability to be in nature and to be moving in different ways is important. And so our school was fortunate that we went from a pavement-only yard to planting trees and having a sand pit and some mulch and some logs. And just we've seen a difference in the type of play that the kids have. We've actually seen less injury, surprisingly enough, way less skinned knees than we did when it was just solid pavement. And so I think a lot of the educators that I am friends with, that I am inspired by, we all have really been inspired by this idea that children need to be involved in active outdoor play. I'm also fortunate that the school that I'm at has now started to schedule in outdoor learning for all the grades from K to 8. It's part of our timetable. It's expected of us that, we're taking our kids outside. And I know that schools that are in the city, it's a little bit more difficult to kind of find that green space because there isn't a lot. Whereas schools up in more northern Ontario, middle of Ontario, we are fortunate enough to have trails and paths and forests nearby that we can take advantage of. But just the value of outdoor play is finally starting to be realized, and people are working on ways to kind of integrate that into curriculum. And one of my colleagues is a grade 6 teacher, and they are outdoor learning every single day. And she's found ways to kind of integrate their curriculum, their social studies curriculum, their science curriculum into being outside. And so it ends up being some of the students' kind of favorite learning time, because they're running around as traders trying to, trade with people. And the outdoor learning environment just provides this plethora of learning, but then also just this freedom of being outside and just breathing fresh air and not being in a classroom for a full day does wonders for your mental health. So I think the schools are starting to kind of see the connection between learning, outdoors, mental health and well-being, active, and has started to not only value it, but then also, put their learning onto timetabling and actually scheduling it into the days. The natural outdoor learning spaces are slowly popping up in spurts. Unfortunately, they're extremely expensive, and schools don't have a huge budget for that type of creation. But I think people are doing the best that they can with what is available in what they are allowed to within the constraints of whatever a board might be putting on that space.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's been really cool to kind of watch people transform their outdoor learning outdoor spaces into creating obstacle courses, adding in outdoor classrooms, and just allowing kids the opportunities to be outside throughout the day, and just seeing the value in that for them.
Yeah. And I know you've seen in your children, when it's a rainy day and you're stuck inside all day, you see the mood, you see the, like children have to release energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? There has to be a release of energy, and movement is how they do that. Now, each child kind of maybe has a different way that they release energy
Yep.
through movement. For me, I liked roughhousing. That's what I did. So whether it be with my siblings, my dad, we loved doing that in the basement, and that's a way to release energy. And I found myself gravitate towards more contact style sports because that's how my body wanted to release energy. There was quite a bit of pent up aggression in there, and I was very, very competitive, as was most other, like all my other siblings. My dad was very competitive, so a lot of that learned. But we all have different ways of going about doing that. But I think if you don't have the opportunity to go outside, or at least even inside, have some sort of movement that you can expel, you can release some of this pent up energy, it makes the learning environment much more difficult for everybody, not just the teacher, but the students as well, right?
For sure. Yeah. Those indoor recess days are super challenging. And I think, I'm the teacher that I'm like, it's only raining a little bit. Like, let's put our raincoats on and go outside, There was a lot of days where it was like an indoor recess and my class was outside. So whether my admin likes that or not, I'm not sure. But I so see the value in kids' ability to focus in a classroom. And if you have them inside all day, yes, I can do movement breaks in the classroom. Yes, we might have our 30 minutes of physical education a day in that day, but that doesn't compare to the ability for them to just run around outside at recess and to play with their friends, and to have non-adult directed play, a non-adult directed time. Like recess is so wonderful for that, for those kids. And so, yeah, I find the indoor recess days are difficult for me, for them, because they're not getting that time that's not free from adults, but a little bit less adults directed. They're missing that time. And so, yeah, I think as a Ontario society, I would say we are like, if it's too cold, we're inside. If it's too snowy, we're inside. If it's too rainy, we're inside. But you look at the forest schools there are some in Ontario, but in, Norway and Sweden and places like that, where, they believe there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad clothing.
Yeah.
So kids are out every day, all day, no matter what the weather is. And their whole school is done outside. Right.
Yeah.
So I think, we still have a ways to go. We still have a lot of learning to do, in ways to support kids and to build kids' ability to get outside, to move, and to learn.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that has to do with educating also the parents, right? Like if there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing, well, that you can't necessarily rely on the kid at a young age in kindergarten, grade 1, to really know exactly what they have to have on for a particular situation. So this is where some coaching, some assistance comes from the parental side of things to demonstrate that and provide the right type of clothing for the day. And, I think that plays a big role in that too.
For sure. And I think the school has a role in helping those families that, might not be able to afford raincoats and rain boots and stuff like that. That, I think if that's something that we're valuing as a education system, then that's something that we need to be supporting our families and supporting our students in.
Yeah. You mentioned something that was really, I thought was really interesting. So I'm just going to kind of link two things together. So you mentioned there's really nothing that comes close to a child being able to run free outside. And you mentioned that, and all I could think of is like, running wild in the wild, like horses and that kind of thing. So I thought about just a term that a really, really smart, really brilliant educator that I know, Gray Cook, who I've met a few times, listened to him speak multiple times at conferences. He said it as like zoo humans, right? So we're becoming more zoo humans in that we are confining ourselves to small spaces. We're not doing the things that our bodies really are meant to do, such as hanging, climbing, crawling, rolling, all those different types of things, running fast and free right outside. And we're becoming zoo humans because we're becoming, you know, less of what our bodies are meant to do. And you're seeing an increase in injuries, you're seeing an increase in chronic pain, chronic disease, and a lot of that, like, I'm not going to blame it on all of it, but a lot of that has to come down with the way we move, because people don't move well, and when they don't move well, they don't move often. If they don't move often, right, it's just this vicious cycle of things. But yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting. Just when you said that, it instantly just flicked the switch, like zoo humans, right? Like that's what we're becoming, and trying to change and alter the spaces that we have our children learning in, whether it be at home or in the classroom or, in the schoolyard, allowing open space, allowing more movement throughout the day, and seeing that as a valuable piece, and being able to kind of learn more in those situations as well. Yeah, I've got a friend of mine, Kelly Starrett, who's in San Diego, and once again, we've chatted several times. And one thing that we spoke a lot about, because I know he's really, really involved in this, is the idea of stand-up desks at schools. Now, there aren't as many here in Canada and Ontario because it is publicly funded, but you have a lot of privately funded schools in the States who can afford to do that kind of thing. But you're seeing really, really great results with regards to not having to sit at a desk, because when you stand, you have the opportunity to shift weight, you're more attentive, you're able to do different things. When you're sitting, there's a lot more distraction that seems to come out. And they've got a lot of research on this. They've done a lot. He's written a book on it. And
Yeah.
so I find that interesting as well. So I'm really looking forward to when the Ontario Canadian schools start to realize this and implement this. I know you have a lot of movement in your
It
classroom.
is starting, and we have, and I don't know if that's just, in my little world at my school, but, the intermediates, we do have standing desks for the older students. We have, I have asked to remove desks out of my classroom to create more of a flexible seating kind of situation. So yes, we still have tables and chairs, but removing that like structure of a desk where everyone sits at their own desk and is only working wherever the teacher puts their desk. So we have tables and they're shared, and they can sit at whatever table they want, whenever they want. And just kind of creating that flexibility, again, building independence and making good choices. It's a learning, if you sit beside your best friend all day, every day, chances are you're not going to get as much work done as if you were to find a spot maybe away from them. So it just provides opportunities for learning. And like you say, the standing desks are wonderful. And so, not only just for intermediate students, but trying to slowly work our way down into the younger grades. But yes, it's a slow process, right? Bringing in new furniture into a building. And I know that I have friends that teach at private schools in Ontario as well. And I know that standing desks and, the ball chairs and things like that are much more common now because of all that research that you say is happening, that people are realizing the value of standing and of moving throughout the day and providing seats and providing standing and just providing options, because like, as you said earlier, every person learns differently. Every person has a different need. So if everyone's told to sit at a desk, that's not actually going to be great for everyone. It might be good for some people, but not for everyone. So having opportunities for all of them are going to make sure that everyone is successful throughout their day.
Yeah, I really love that. So as we wrap up here, there are several resources available to anyone interested in more information surrounding outdoor exploration and risky play. A few that we would recommend are outsideplay.ca. This is a collaborative project by the BC Children's Hospital, the University of British Columbia, and the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit. And it really helps parents navigate risky play. So exploring what risky play is and how to match the maybe fears of risk on behalf of the parents and what the child might see as risky play, so that you as a parent or as an educator feel comfortable with the amount of risk involved. There's also Participation. They have some fantastic resources for getting outside, getting moving, and can really help parents start to model really good behaviors when it comes to healthy physical lifestyles. There's a great book by Angela Hanscom called Barefoot and Balanced, and it's all about being outside, being barefoot, and experiencing risky play. It is a really easy and quick read, but it has some great ideas for parents, for educators about how to help your children with their development.
And if you're really into reading research, Dr. Mariana Bersoni, who's a professor at the University of British Columbia, is absolutely fantastic. You can find her stuff everywhere. There's videos, there's so many resources on this as it starts to become something that we see as being really, really valuable because we're just not doing it anymore. And so, yeah, lots of great resources for you. Also, if you ever want to read anything that you can extrapolate to younger individuals, anything by Katie Bauman would also be really great as well. She's written a few books like Move Your DNA. She talks a lot about movement nutrition, and so some great stuff from her as well. So where can the audience find out more maybe about you and about some of the things? Because most of what you post about is regarding like inquiry-based learning. And so where can they find out more if they want some information on that?
So I have an Instagram account that is Wonderful Inquiry, Wonder and then Full, F-U-L, Inquiry. So you can find me on Instagram there. I post activities that I do in class. Right now it's different with the pandemic. But yeah, just kind of posting, following a day in the life of my students and what we get up to. I also have a blog that you can find on my Instagram as well, or just Google, Wonderful Inquiry, and you'll come up with that, where I've posted our inquiry, some of our learning outdoors and indoors, if that's something that you're interested in, mostly specific to kindergarten. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I can find you at home. I want to thank you a lot for coming on. It's been wonderful to be able to chat about this because I know we talk about this all the time, but being able to share this with the audience and other people who are, whether they be personal trainers or, young parents trying to kind of navigate what to do and how to do this whole movement-based thing with their children. I think this is really valuable. So thanks a lot for coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
State of the Industry Podcast.
I'll be back.